Hello, one. Hello, all. I hope you're well. I hope you're ready for another weekend of Formula One action. Hopefully, this time it is not rained out. Hello, everybody who's in the chat already. I can see that we've got like 10 viewers, people in the chat already. Hopefully, it will come up for me on my screen soon, as there is a little bit of delay. But welcome. Lovely to see you all. Let's talk Zandvoort. Let's talk what I think. Now, I might be a little bit contentious here. I think it's going to be one of the more boring races of the season. I'm going to be honest. I just can't see this one being that electrifying, to be honest with you. Quite a lot of news to go over from this week, though. Those of you who have seen my George Russell video will know my opinion on Valtteri Bottas after last weekend and how my opinion slightly changed on George Russell over last weekend as well. I thought he showed something a little bit extra, something a little bit more as to what we're waiting for to see in a Mercedes outfit. Secondarily to that, though, we had the Kimi Raikkonen announcement, which came out of absolutely nowhere. So thank you guys so much for your support on the Kimi Raikkonen stream, because that literally just came out of nowhere. I was sitting there, minding my own business. Kimi Raikkonen just comes out, randomly retires on a Wednesday afternoon, and I was like, right, okay, let's just put something together. So thank you very much indeed. Hello, guys. We've got Zuma, Blaze. We've got Smag. Never really know how to say that. Joe, Luca, Paul. Hello, guys. How are we doing? What are we thinking in terms of the Netherlands Grand Prix? So the first real thing I want to talk about is the track itself. Had a lot of people, and a lot of pictures, obviously, of that banking into turn one. And people have questions about it. People are sort of asking whether that sort of bodes itself well to Formula One or not. I personally don't think it does. I don't think we're going to see too many overtakes in this Grand Prix, let alone into that turn one. There is a couple of little DRS zones that we could see some overtaking in. But again, I think it's going to be very difficult for the guys to get the overtake done there. You can see it's not the longest track, but it is a very skill-heavy one. Lando Norris was talking about, because the corners are so high speed, you're always right on the edge of where the grip is going to be. You're always right on the edge of where you think the car is just basically going to spin off. And we've seen a few little incidents already over the weekend of drivers losing it in a couple of those corners. It's very close, very condensed. The gravel is very close to the track as well. It is going to be an exciting weekend of action. Maybe not in the race, though. I think this lends itself as being one of those qualifying battles that really sort of puts the cat amongst the pigeons. When you have this kind of track, when you have the lack of overtaking, it's going to be very difficult. Hello, Joe. Mr. Lights Out. I like. That is what the show is called. An ardent subscriber from Nagaland here. Wow. There we go. Let's delve into it, though. So I've sort of said my little bit about the track there. I'm not really looking forward to the race as a whole this weekend, but I am really looking forward to qualifying. Let's sort of delve into the news a little bit first before I give you my predictions. Or actually, I'll give you my predictions because I'm glad of how they're going. And usually when your predictions are correct in qualifying, it goes very wrong. Oh, sorry, when they're correct in free practice, it goes very wrong in qualifying in the race. So I was pretty happy with this. I was expecting Ferrari to have quite a good package coming into this Grand Prix. I think it's one of those tracks that lends itself to the Ferrari quite nicely, as long as it isn't too cold or raining. We saw how much the Ferrari package really struggled in the rain last weekend. They were absolutely dogged, and we'll be very happy indeed that they managed to pick up points, because Norris had to drop out of the top 10, Bottas had to drop out of the top 10, and Perez had to drop out of the top 10 before the Ferrari drivers were able to pick up points. So they were pretty lucky last weekend, and I think this is the kind of track that lends itself to them. So what I've done is I've gone for Verstappen to win this Grand Prix. I've gone for Hamilton second, because again, I think that this title battle is going to go down to the wire. I think Hamilton will be a little bit frustrated that last time out he didn't pick up second place. Obviously, he was probably thinking, I've got second place at least in the bag in the race, and then the race didn't happen. So he's probably a little bit disappointed that the race didn't go ahead. I've then gone for Leclerc as my podium sitter. I was really debating putting Norris in here because I think Norris will come back with resurgence. He looked so incredibly quick last weekend. Really unfortunate to have that incident in qualifying. And I think he's going to continue that form on. I think he's really going to push himself this weekend and spike up in his performance. But I just decided to go for Leclerc because, as I said, I thought this was a Ferrari-esque track. Ferrari was so bad last weekend that they're going to want to come to this Grand Prix with a little bit of vibe. So maybe, Norris goes in there in my top 5 as well. I've gone for both Leclerc and Carlos Sainz doing really well over the course of this weekend. I've then gone for Ocon as my top 10, sort of a little bit of an outside shout. He looked really, really quick in pre-practice too as well, so I'm very happy with that choice. Ocon, I think, just looks better in that Alpine car. Since Silverstone, looks a lot happier with the balance. And the Alpine, because they have now got that contract with him for a little while, they're maybe just sort of, having a little bit of a debate over what they want the car to look like moving forward. I think they made some changes around Monaco sort of time, and that's when we saw Ocon really drop off. Now they've been able to rectify that. Ocon then won the Hungarian Grand Prix, which I don't think anyone was expecting. Little Ocon getting that win, but that has boosted him in terms of the points, and I think I could see him staying around about where he is for the rest of the season if they can continue to get that balance right with Ocon's car. So I've gone for him getting a good, solid amount of points this weekend. And top 10 for those midfield teams. I'm assuming that Verstappen and Perez are going to be in the top 8. I'm assuming Hamilton and Bottas are going to be in the top 8 somewhere. Leclerc and Sainz, Ricciardo and Lando. We're only talking about 9th and 10th place. Usually, if everybody finished where you'd expect, where those guys can pick up points. So I think of those sort of midfieldy drivers, Ocon is going to be the one for me to pick up that 9th or 10th, or even better if one of those drivers in front does manage to drop out a little bit. And I've gone for Ricciardo as my wild card. Came out last weekend, got a 4th place finish after qualifying. Sort of snuck under the radar a little bit. Everybody was talking about George Russell in P2. And nobody really picked up on the fact that Ricciardo had an exceptional qualifying session as well in the wet, in a McLaren that he doesn't really like very much. And maybe, maybe he did need that little bit of edge. The fact that he's got that experience in the wet weather maybe helps him out a little bit. In that McLaren car, and the fact that other drivers in and around him maybe, haven't got that much experience of driving in Formula One in those wet conditions. And that was how he was able to pick up that 4th place. Personally, I want to be a little bit more positive about him. I think he's come back after the summer break. I think he's put lots and lots of time in the simulator over the summer break. Probably talked to his engineer a lot, talked to the team a lot. He started this season on a pretty poor note on him. He's gone up and down throughout the season. I think he's going to think of this next 10 races as his opportunity to show what he's really about. And guarantee that he's not only just in that McLaren next season because they want to keep him around as a driver and as an engineer, but also because he warrants that place in a top Formula One team. So I think Ricciardo could have a good weekend as well. Didn't know where to spot him though. Didn't know whether he'd pick up that podium or not. Wasn't quite sure if he's top 5 level. I could see him finishing 6th or 7th, but then on a really good day, I can imagine him finishing even higher still. So I'd love to know your predictions in the chat. You've got to get them in now. You've got to get them in before... Well, you're lucky. You've seen FP1, FP2. I do these on a Thursday night so that they're ready to go. These are my predictions for the weekend. I'd love to know your outside shouts for a podium, your outside shouts for points finishes, and who you think is going to come where. Hello, everyone in the chat. Sorry, I'm going on a bit of a tangent. Where's everyone from? Here, there, and everywhere, Cuckoo. We are from all over the place. Unpopular opinion, but I think Lando or Daniel will be front row. I think you could be right, especially because this kind of track, as I said earlier, it lends itself to those drivers that are willing to push to the absolute limit. Similar to what we saw last time out in Belgium with Lando Norris driving so incredibly quickly in that McLaren whilst the wet weather conditions, he was the driver that was willing to push it to the limit. We obviously saw the repercussions of that come out in Q3, unfortunately, but it's a similar sort of track where if you can get right on the edge of those banked corners, if you can push your car just to that very limit where it is basically almost in the wall or almost in the gravel, then you're going to get the best out of this car. I know that kind of sort of works for any of these Formula One tracks, but there's a lot of tracks you can get away with pushing the car to the limit. You know, I'm thinking about France. If you make a real mistake in France, likelihood is you probably ruin your tyres, but you maybe get back in to the race or to qualification, wherever you might be. This track here, if you ditch it, it is gone. It is in the gravel, it's in the wall, it is done so out there. So I think this is one of those tracks that the McLaren drivers could do pretty good. I've opted for the Ferrari drivers just because I think the track itself, as in the design of the track, rather than the fact that it is a very close track, the design of the track and that sort of experience that the Ferrari drivers have, and especially after last weekend, they'll be a little bit disappointed. I think they're going to have a good weekend. How am I today, Sadie? I'm wonderful. Thank you so much for asking. And you think Leclerc will DNF with an engine issue? Well, let's talk a little bit about engine issues then, if you want to. That is a lovely segue. When it comes to engine issues, it seems like everybody is having them. And apart from Ferrari, which is a little bit of a surprise because the Ferrari power unit is usually the one that I question the most of the power units that are on the grid. But Ferrari, FP2, Leclerc leads Ferrari in a 1-2 in second practice in Zandvoort. Hamilton only completes one lap. And actually, I'm going to scroll down a little bit because you can see there that we've got Verstappen said that he would have been quickest. Of course, he was quickest in FP1. He doesn't have to, brag about it in FP2 as well, does he? In front of the Netherlands fans. But I'm more interested in these two stories here because the Mercedes power unit does just seem to be falling apart. So in free practice 1, we had Vettel. He was sent out. The team sort of gambled a little bit, I guess, on them being able to fix the power unit and get him out for a little bit more of a run. And it just really didn't go well. Started smoking, lost lots of power, and then Vettel had to go and grab a fire extinguisher to actually put out the fire that had come out of the back of that Aston Martin. And then in free practice 2, we had Lewis Hamilton only getting in 3 laps before just, again, his power unit, that Mercedes power unit, ground to a halt in the middle of the session. And then he had to park it on the side of the road and push it down one of the escape roads as well. So the Mercedes power unit, and I don't know how often you really say this, because the Mercedes power unit has definitely been the most consistent and also, you'd argue, probably the best of the 4 that are available on the grid over the last, 10 years, possibly? It has been the power unit of choice for most of the teams. And maybe it's just starting to show some little inklings of problems. They might be running an older power unit, to be fair, because you've got to remember they do only have a certain amount of set items throughout the year. That's why we've been talking a lot about engines with Red Bull, because they've lost a few, especially Verstappen has lost a few in that collision in Silverstone, in that collision in Azerbaijan. He lost an engine there, I think. So we're sort of starting to get to the point where Verstappen is going to have to take a penalty at some point to replace an engine. I'm sure Lewis Hamilton was hoping that that would be a benefit for him. Now Lewis Hamilton's having issues with power units of his own. Luckily, it's in free practice. And hopefully for him, it was an older power unit. I haven't actually been able to read the full story of this yet. But it doesn't bode well when those power units start to just not quite work as they should. As your qualifying predictions are coming through in the chat, let's have a look then. Ferrari have been so good in the practice sessions today from Theo. I know, I'm so glad I put both Ferrari drivers in my predictions. But I'm hoping that they can continue on. I hope it's not like a practice catfish where they come out in practice and they're absolutely phenomenal and then they get it all wrong in the race. I'm just really hopeful that they can get it right in qualifying. I don't think they're going to get it right in the race particularly. But I think we could end up with not a Monaco, very similar to Monaco in that I think it's going to be very, very difficult to pass on this track this weekend. Could end up being a bit of a procession on Sunday. So it's all about qualifying and all about where you can get on Saturday for me this race this weekend. Daniel Orlando could do well for sure. Not sure they have the car better in a straight line. That's very true. There's not like a massive straight in this track though. I can pop the track board back up for you. There's not like a huge straight in terms of Zandvoort. You know, it's quite a tight-knit, old-fashioned kind of circuit. I think the last time that Lewis Hamilton drove there was in 2005. So it is like an older school F3 kind of track. And we don't often see it in Formula One. Pole Verstappen, P2 Lando, P3 Bottas, P4 Hamilton, Ricciardo and Leclerc all the way down in P6. Not sure about that. I want to see a Ferrari podium for me, to be honest with you. I think they're begging for a podium. I'd like to see either Carlos Sainz or Daniel Ricciardo on the podium personally. I know that Verstappen and Hamilton are probably going to occupy 1 and 2. So if we can see someone else in that 3 position, you know, outside of like Bottas and Perez, the guys who you'd imagine, you know, would be bookies' favourites to be in there, I'd like that. Verstappen win, Ferrari podium, Gasly podium from Sadie. You know how to talk to me. You know. Sadie's just trying to win brownie points. That's all that is. As soon as somebody puts Gasly on the podium, they're like, oh, I've got one in there. I've got one in for James there. Put Gasly on the podium. I appreciate that. Ocon top 5 and Perez top 10. I don't think Perez top 10 is a very would be a very big surprise. You'd very much hope that Perez was in the top 10. But yeah, fair. Have you seen the video about Alex to Williams Toto? There's a free Williams and Alpha seat. I have. I talked a little bit about it in my Kimi Raikkonen video over the course of the week. Because that Alpha seat is now available, I think that's the first domino that needed to fall, right? It was whether or not Kimi was going to stay was definitely the first inkling we were going to get as to who would progress on to which teams. So we now know that there is a slot in Formula One. I think that's the main thing. When we're talking about silly season, we need to know that there's a seat available, right? So if all 20 seats are just occupied, then all we can do is swap drivers in and out, right? We can't actually get any new drivers in. Now we know that there's a seat available. We know that one of the drivers is going to be out of the sport next season. Now we can start to do some real shuffling of the pack. And I'm very, very interested to see what's announced first. I think we could possibly see Bottas announced very, very soon. If we see Bottas announced, for me, it's up in the air as to whether that'll be Alfa Romeo or Williams. I know lots of people are saying he's heavily linked with Alfa Romeo. That seems to be the sort of general story. But you've got to remember, Bottas was at Williams before. Toto Wolff has a lot of contacts at Williams. And if Toto Wolff is trying to get him a seat somewhere in Formula One, I think Williams would probably be the optimal seat for trying to get him in. They have that link with Mercedes. It kind of makes a little bit more sense to me that Bottas goes to Williams. But at the same time, we've got all of this news coming out that Albon is linked to Williams. And I don't actually know if it's on the Formula One website. There was a good... it's a really good article about... Yeah, here it is. Wolff says that he wouldn't block race return for Albon as Mercedes-backed De Vries eyes step up to Formula One. So I think they're the 2 drivers that Williams are debating. I think they could pick up both, you know. I think we could end up seeing Latifi dropped by Williams, promoted into Mercedes. Bottas, if he does go to Alfa Romeo instead of Williams, we have 2 Williams seats available there. Why not Albon? Somebody who's got Formula One experience, somebody who's got experience of the 2022 cars because he's been driving so much for the testing side with Red Bull. And De Vries, somebody who's just won F2 a couple of years ago, just won Formula E this year. He's become the first Formula E winner in that Mercedes car. He has experience with Mercedes as a team. You know, he'll have that link with Toto Wolff that will, if Williams are going to stick with the Mercedes power unit, you know, they'll still have that link there to the Mercedes team. I think it's not a bad idea for Williams to pick up those two drivers. If it was me and I was at Williams, I'd be maybe just testing the waters with somebody like a Gasly, or so I was going to say somebody like an Ocon, but Ocon's already signed on for a fairly long time. I think Gasly's the one I'd test the waters with. I think if you test the waters with Gasly as a Williams, if you can pick up a driver like Gasly, and I feel a little bit sorry for Albon here in that if it was down to me and you asked me to pick between Albon and Gasly in a similar way to what AlphaTauri had to do, I would pick Gasly. I think they made that right decision. I think Williams should slightly be testing the waters with Gasly. And then if they don't get Gasly, I think Bottas an exceptional replacement for George Russell. And then if they also want to replace Latifi, there's the Albon, Nick de Vries sort of seat. They could even go for your Piastri, someone like that in F2. It depends whether they want to bring someone in through or someone who's already got that Formula One experience. But for me, it's a little bit of a shake-up. There's still lots of question marks for me around the grid, especially Alfa Romeo Williams. And to be honest with you, because they are the teams down towards the bottom, I don't think they need to be the first to blink. Like, it would not surprise me if we don't know the Alfa Romeo drivers until December sort of time. Like, I think Alfa Romeo are in a really good position where they can wait for almost everybody else to kind of sort out where they want to be, and then pick the best of the rest that's left. Because they're a team that is still growing into Formula One. They've got lots of connections. Whether they'll still have that connection with Ferrari next year, they could completely switch their power unit. They could just go for something else. They could decide to go to Alpine and be like, actually, we want a Renault power unit. They could go to Red Bull and say, look, we want one of your Red Bull power units. Unlikely that they'll give them one of those because they've got AlphaTauri as well. But at the same time, you know what I mean? Alfa Romeo are probably the team that's got the most ability to make those options and go anywhere that they want to go. Let me see what you guys are saying in the chat. I bet with my friend, I say Lando Norris wins on Sunday for his first ever win in Formula One. I'd be very, very happy with that as a big McLaren fan myself. But I don't know. I could see Lando doing very well. I just feel like this track lends itself to Ferrari. I've just got a Ferrari feeling in the air for some reason. I don't really know why, but that's just it's just the way that I'm seeing it at this moment in time. I'm going to pop the Drivers' Championship board up there for you, just so you can reacquaint yourself with it after I made a mistake on the video on Wednesday. Thank you, everybody, for pointing that out. Because Ricciardo has taken 8th place off of Gasly in 9th now. They've switched around. I think that was pretty much the only change that happened because of the half points last weekend. So it wasn't much of... Oh, no, and George Russell overtook Latifi as well, of course. But they were the only two real changes that happened over the course of last weekend. It was a bit of a non-plus weekend in terms of the racing and the championships and everything, to be honest with you. Traffic in quali is going to be exciting. That's very true. It's going to be another one of those tracks where it will be close as to whether everybody will get round on that final lap, because everybody's going to want quite a bit of clear air, quite a bit of space, especially on those banks corners, those really fast corners. You do not want to be in dirty air whilst going around one of those corners, because you are more than likely to spin off and lose it somewhere. Lando 100% second row qualifying. Toto has said Albon maybe to Williams. Hoping to see Lando's redemption tomorrow. Really looking forward to qualifying. Yeah, it could be, couldn't it? It could be Lando coming back at it again. Bit disappointed by last week. Theo saying Ferrari P3 and P5. Like it. That would be very good for me, especially if it's Leclerc in P3 and Carlos Sainz in P5. Go Carlos Sainz. I predict that it will be chaos in Q3 and Q2 as everyone try and get their best lap time on the board. Yeah, it's going to be very chaotic towards the end. Webster, you make a great point, because when it comes to that final push in that last couple of minutes, a bit like how we saw in Austria, right? It's a condensed track, it's a smaller track, and like we saw in Austria, everyone is going to try and back themselves up, give themselves a really good amount of space to set a flying lap. And if everyone goes out at a similar sort of time and everyone joins that queue at a very similar sort of time, one, it's very difficult for the drivers to keep the temperature, keep the car engaged where they'd want it to be. But secondarily, those guys at that back of the queue and the guys that can't quite get round to the front of the queue by the time we get to the final couple of corners, they're really going to struggle to get across the line for me. I think we could see another, who was it? It was Sebastian Vettel, wasn't it? Who didn't get across the line in time. We've also seen it with Sergio Perez this season, where he didn't get across the line in time before the checkered flag to set that final qualifying lap. So it'd be very interesting to see whether drivers know that, use that sort of information, and just go out really early. You know, as soon as it gets to Q2, Q3, they set in, they go for that really early time, maybe before the track is even rubbered in too much. They go really early, absolutely fly around, try and set a lap time that will get them through into the next session and see how it goes. Because if they wait until the end, they're in real trouble. There's going to be a lot of traffic. I think Albon or Nico Hulkenberg will be back next year. I think Albon, for me, is very much more likely, Paul, than Nico Hulkenberg. As much as I'd love to see the Hulk back, but I'm not sure. He's a very good test driver is the problem. I think Hulkenberg, in the way he came in for Racing Point last year, he kind of proved that he's the perfect backup driver. And sometimes, you know, in football, when you become like an impact sub, like you become that player who's really good at coming off the bench. It's a similar sort of thing with Nico Hulkenberg. He's proved that he can go into pretty much any car, in pretty much any team, at pretty much any track, and deliver a pretty good performance. And the problem with that is he's never proved that he's right at the tip top, but he's never proved that he's nowhere near capable in Formula One. He's put himself right in that niche where he's the perfect substitute. Like, let's say that obviously Mercedes, if Lewis Hamilton or Valtteri Bottas was out of a race because of COVID or something, it would be George Russell that came in. Aston Martin, I think, Williams, similar sort of thing. Possibly even McLaren. I can't remember who else he's test driving for. He's test driving for like 3 or 4 teams. And again, if any of those drivers missed any of those races, he'd be the first man in the queue, I think, to be honest with you. He'd be the first driver that I'd want in as a replacement driver. So I don't think Nico Hulkenberg will be back as a full driver next year, but I do think he will still be in and around the Formula One paddock. Albon is already driving a Ferrari in DTM. I think Red Bull would still be happy to get another Red Bull Junior on the grid. The amount of talent they've brought in is exceptional. That is very true. They have got Lawson, Vips, Deruvela. They're all coming through at a similar sort of time. They've already brought in Sonoda this year. The problem is they just really haven't got a space, right? So Verstappen, you're assuming Verstappen's going to stay next year. I know that hasn't been like fully put to bed yet. But you're assuming that Verstappen is going to stay for the foreseeable future. You've then got Sergio Perez. Perez has been confirmed for 2022. He's done just enough, in my opinion, to get that seat, that second Red Bull seat, which is just a curse. But he's been very good when he's been able to get it together. He's had a few races where it's hit or miss. Gasly's been exceptional for me. Gasly's been like top 3 or 4 drivers on the grid this season in terms of his performances. So they can't really move Gasly. And has Sonoda been that bad? Where Red Bull can get... The problem is Red Bull just have such a surplus of drivers. And I don't think Sonoda, in his rookie season, you know, he's level on points with Stroll. 5 points ahead of Russell, half as many points as Vettel. You know, he'd do very well to catch up with the Aston Martins and the Alpines of this world. But if AlphaTauri do come fifth in the Constructors' Championship, what are they? 8 points off of Alpine. So if they do manage to come fifth, then they're not doing too badly. And Sonoda's not done a terrible job. I know that he's had very hit and miss races and a lot of races that really haven't gone his way, but he's got the second half of the season to prove himself. I'd be surprised if Albon comes back into the Red Bull AlphaTauri teams anytime soon because of the amount of talent that they've got in F2. So I think this is perfect. I think this is the real perfect opportunity for Albon to move on to another team. And I can understand why Williams want him. He's got that experience, got experience of the 2022 car, and he's an exceptional driver. For me, should have got a lot more points, was quite unlucky, had quite a lot of incidents with Lewis Hamilton during his time at Red Bull. Williams is going to move up the grid over the next few years, and Gasly is the perfect driver to lead the way. I agree. That's why I said Williams. If I'm Williams, I'm just testing the water with Gasly first before I move on to the other drivers which are available. And for me, I'd get rid of Latifi. I know that they've sort of said Latifi might stay. Latifi's been pretty good, picked up 7 points for the team. He drove exceptionally well in Hungary. I don't think he's shown enough for me to, warrant being Formula One quality for the foreseeable future. And I think if you're Williams, this is kind of the right sort of time to get rid of someone like a Latifi whilst you can, when you've got the money coming in from other sources. Yeah, for me, not sure Latifi will stay that much longer. Christian said Mercedes have called Albon 4 times, telling him not to go to Williams. Wow. Well, that would puts a spanner in the works. Why would Mercedes call him not to? I guess because they're maybe trying to get like a De Vries or a Bottas into Williams, and if Albon does go to Williams, that puts a real spanner in the work for Toto Wolff, who's trying to get a spot for all of his Mercedes drivers, right? Sup, mate, said smooth operator. Love Carlos Sainz. Could it be Carlos Sainz on the podium? I've opted for Leclerc in my predictions, but I'd absolutely dreamland if we have Carlos Sainz. Tomorrow, we do a stream? Yes, we do a stream. So I could put that up if you want. The schedule as of now is 6 o'clock today. The pre-race preamble is what you're watching right now. Hence why I'm pre-rambling. It's just about this show is a little bit off the cuff. It's kind of here, there, or everywhere because I just sort of talk about whatever is on the news and whatever sort of pops up in the chat, to be honest with you. Hence why it's a pre-ramble. Preamble. Saturday, 1:30. Same as last week, 1:30. We're going to start about half an hour before qualifying actually gets underway at 2 o'clock. And then Sunday, very similar indeed, 1:30. Then the actual race starts at 2 o'clock. So Saturday will be live for about, 2 hours. And then Sunday, probably about 3 is the general gist of things. If you did just want to get your head around what the weekend will look like. And the Sebastian Vettel video was supposed to be out today. I didn't get an opportunity to fully finish the edit yesterday. So I'm going to finish the edit after this and then hopefully get it out for tomorrow. I should have never really, put these time pressures on myself for videos. I've never done it before. And the first 2 times that I've done it, it's been very close indeed. So unfortunately, I'm just not very good when it comes to putting myself under like a strict time pressure on a video. But there we are. It was something new I thought I'd try. In the first year of his F1 career mode, I made Kimi retire, and it was on the same day when Kimi retired in real life. Well, Seto Kaiba, what you need to tell us now is, as you've continued that career mode, who came in where? Is your F1 game able to predict the real world? Why would they call Albon? Surely they've called Williams to convince them not to bring Alex to the team. I think they'd probably rather talk to Williams, right? Maybe they've just called Albon to see if it's likely. Because Albon is still within the Formula One framework. Albon is still test driving for Red Bull. Obviously, he's got a DTM stuff going on. Maybe Albon I was going to say maybe Albon doesn't fancy a Formula One seat. He'd be silly if he didn't fancy a Formula One seat, wouldn't he? So maybe they're sort of checking in on Albon to see whether he is hoping to sort of long it out for another Red Bull seat or whether he is looking to actually move to a new team. I think even if Albon gets a seat at Williams, Latifi may not stay and Bottas may take that place. I think that's interesting. I think if Bottas and Albon are in Williams next year, who would Alfa Romeo bring in? I guess they'd have to stick with Giovinazzi then, wouldn't they? Because you wouldn't want to be Alfa Romeo that is bringing in two brand new drivers. I think it would probably be, if Bottas goes to Williams, then it's probably Giovinazzi and Ilott. I think if Bottas goes to Alfa Romeo, it's probably Bottas and Ilott. I think they get rid of Giovinazzi because they'll have an experienced driver in Bottas in the roster. Finish work at 1 p.m. Well, you're very, very close, but hopefully you can get home before 2, right? 2 is the real nitty gritty that we're going to get into. It's funny that I didn't get the video out. Same way Vettel's car didn't get out on the track properly either. Exactly. That was what I was foreshadowing. I did it on purpose, actually. I did it on purpose. I was foreshadowing the fact that the Mercedes power units as a whole this weekend would just slowly fall apart. I think that was what I was going for. Hello, Snowmate. How are we doing? Nice to see you here. Talked to you a lot on Discord over the past few days, to be fair. So nice to see you checking in. I think Nick will come to Formula One. Ooh, I'm not sure, you know. He won Formula 2 and didn't get the step up into Formula 1. Why does now winning Formula E give him that opportunity? Why does it give him that step up? It was ridiculous, to be fair. Ricciardo went to Mercedes. Oh, no. Ilott was at McLaren. No. We're not gonna listen to that kind of madness when it comes to the Formula One grid. I was just having a look, actually. I'm even happier now because I'm just seeing some news about Ocon saying that he's close to perfect with the balance. And I think Ocon in that Alpine, I think that Alpine is a little bit underrated as a car this year. I think they've been a bit disappointing, maybe. I was maybe expecting Alpine to be in and amongst it with the McLarens of this world. I think they'll maybe be a bit disappointed that they're in that sort of third group rather than in the second group, to be honest. But if Ocon has found the balance, he's exceptionally good in that car. On Sebastian Vettel as well, I think, who was it earlier that said, we like Sebastian and Sebastian likes us. Hints at the fact that Vettel will remain at Aston Martin for 2022. I'll be honest, I thought Sebastian Vettel already had a contract for 2022 at Aston Martin. That news kind of makes me think that maybe he doesn't, which if they get rid of Sebastian Vettel at Aston Martin, they would have to be absolutely insane. He's been so good in that Aston Martin car. Was stripped of a second place in Hungary, which was, let's be honest, absolutely disgusting. Like, just because they didn't quite have enough fuel left in the tank. Like, I know that that's a rule and regulation and should obviously be followed, but at the same time, like, they still got around the track and they could have just taken that 300 mil and maybe been able to do the tests still. But I'm a little bit frustrated and annoyed for Sebastian that he hasn't been offered that contract yet for the 2021 season because he's been absolutely outstanding. I was actually going to have a look. So we know that Hamilton's got a new contract for next year. I'm just going to go down the teams and sort of think about which drivers are yet to have a contract because there's probably more than you think. So Lewis Hamilton has got a contract. Valtteri Bottas, we know, has not, right? Lewis Hamilton's got 2 years left on his McLaren deal. Sergio Perez has got another year at Red Bull. I think Max Verstappen has got 1 more year left on his Red Bull contract, but I'm surprised they haven't tried to elongate that yet. I think leaving it until next season when he's got 1 year left and possibly when he's got a car that isn't as good as the car he's got this season Could be a little bit of a risk from Red Bull there, as he might start to just look elsewhere, especially if Hamilton's only got one more year left in Formula One. Pretty sure McLaren have got both Daniel Ricciardo and Lando Norris down for next year. So Lando Norris has definitely got a contract. We found out about that in Monaco. And I'm pretty sure Daniel Ricciardo got one more year, I think. He's got one more year on his McLaren contract. And I think, he warrants staying that one more year. Charles Leclerc, Carlos Sainz have been, we know, have lots and lots and lots of contract years left between them. Esteban Ocon has also been guaranteed a seat at the Alpine car for the next 3 years. Fernando Alonso's got another year on his contract. So we're looking at these top 5 teams, and they've all pretty much got their drivers nailed on, apart from Valtteri Bottas. So there's not really that much space left. Pierre Gasly has another year. Yuki Tsunoda. Oh, I'm not sure if Yuki Tsunoda has a 1 year or a 2 year contract. Does anybody know in the chat? Does Yuki Tsunoda have a 1 year or 2 year contract? Because I know he's just come into the Alpine team, and it would be very, very AlphaTauri. It would be very, very AlphaTauri to only put Yuki Tsunoda on a 1 year contract. But does anyone know? Does he have a 1 year or 2 year? I might have to look that up myself if nobody knows. Let me open a new tab, and I'll leave that just for a second to see if anybody in the chat knows first. Sebastian Vettel has not got a contract for next year yet, which is astounding to me. Like, Vettel definitely needs a contract. Aston Martin should be doing absolutely everything in their power that they can to keep him on for next year. And I'm pretty sure Lance Stroll has got 1 more year as well. Nicholas Latifi doesn't have another year. George Russell doesn't have another year. Kimi Raikkonen, we know, is retiring. Antonio Giovinazzi, I think doesn't have another year left. And then Mick Schumacher and Nikita Mazepin, I think, are both on 1 year, but they'll try and sort out something with those two over the next few weeks or so. Tsunoda's the one I'm not really sure about. I don't know whether Tsunoda's on a 1 year or 2 year contract. Let me see if it says on the Formula One website. Probably not. It's probably something I'm going to have to Google outside of birthday 2000. My goodness me. Man's born in 2000. No, it doesn't say how long his contract is. Let me know in the chat, how long is Yuki Tsunoda's contract with AlphaTauri? Is that information that we know, or is that something that is kept under wraps by the Red Bull guys? I wonder. Let's have a little look. I don't see the hype for Nick, to be honest. I think Callum should get the seat. I think it's just whether you warrant experience in Nico Hulkenberg, or do you mean Nick De Vries? So as soon as you say Nick, I always go for Nico Hulkenberg for some reason. Nick De Vries, I think it's just because he's won Formula 2, Formula E. He's got that winning mentality. He's got that hype around him at this minute in time. If he hadn't have won Formula E, I don't know if there'd be this much momentum behind him getting into Formula 1, to be perfectly honest. And I think they occupy 2 very different seats. Like, I can't see Nick coming to Alfa Romeo, but also I can't see Ilott going in at Williams either. I think if there is a seat left at Alfa Romeo, Ilott gets it. If there's a seat left at Williams, then Nick is definitely in the running for it. I love your Formula 1 2022 grid. Thank you so much, mate. F1 grid 2022. I cannot see Gasly at Williams, but otherwise I very much agree. That was a little bit of an out there shout. I think Williams should go and ask more than anything. I think Williams, their first port of call should be going to Gasly and being like, have you even thought about leaving AlphaTauri, or are you dead set on staying in Red Bull and trying to get up to that Red Bull seat again? Because if he isn't, Williams, it's this time now that they should take to try and get him in. For me, anyway. Vettel can retire and work for the FIA. I would absolutely love that. I would love that. I don't want to see him retire yet. Maybe, a similar sort of thing with Kimi. Sort of early 40s, Vettel to retire. I think he'll be one of those drivers that does stick around Formula 1 quite a lot. He reminds me more and more of Niki Lauda. As he's aging. I know that that's probably not like a crazy connection to be making there, but He reminds me more and more of a Niki Lauda type figure. Um, and I think he will have that sort of impact in Formula One after he does retire. He'll stick around. He'll maybe be connected with a team and bring through some drivers, help to sort of create. Maybe he'll go to like a Ferrari or something whilst Mick Schumacher is there. We've seen the connection that those two have with one another. If then he goes on and works with that Ferrari team or works with young drivers, I could see him being in and around Formula One for a very, very long time. Any thoughts on which would be the 22nd race location? Isn't it? Isn't Dubai like being thought about? Oh no, Qatar. It's either Dubai or Qatar. I can't remember now. One of them is being like and ahed about because it kind of needs to be in that kind of part of the world ish, doesn't it? Um, Actually, Bottas and Russell have signed. I mean, they definitely haven't. Oh, they just haven't announced it yet. Yeah, yeah, I know what you mean. I know what you mean. Who buys his clothes? My clothes? Me, I guess. Or, if it's like a gift, I guess like my mum or someone. Yuki's on a 1 year. He is on a 1 year contract. So yeah, we could like Yuki Tsunoda could be gone at the end of the season too if they don't there's been no news or no even like speculation as to whether Yuki Tsunoda has got a new contract yet or not, right? There's not even been anyone talking about it. So I think Yuki Tsunoda could be gone at the end of the season if he doesn't buck up his ideas a little bit. It'd be very Red Bull, wouldn't it? Bring through one of possibly like the most anticipated talents in Yuki Tsunoda, give him 1 year, an absolutely atrocious season, and then just disappears into the ether. No offense, Gio, but bye. Aston Martin is very happy with Seb. Yeah, I'm confident too that they'll get him in for 2022, to be honest. Vettel has a contract, Aston, it runs out at the end of 2022. I don't know, the way that they're talking about it, it seems like it runs out in 2021. Like, there's literally a news story about who was it in the Aston Martin team? There's a news story about oh god, how do I say that? Zafnauer. I'm gonna go for Zafnauer. Saying that we like Sebastian and he likes us, and says that Vettel. He hints that Vettel will remain at the team for 2022. So he hasn't guaranteed that seat yet. He's just hinted at it. Just hinted at the fact that he will be there in 2022. Oh, now we're getting mixed messages. 2 years on Yuki or one? Yeah, lots of mid to lower teams have spaces. That's kind of what you expect going into a season with such jeopardy next year, though, right? With all of the changes, if you're a big team and you can get your business done early, and you can get yourself sorted and ready for what is going to be a big change next year, then you want to get that business done as soon as you possibly can, in my opinion. If Seb joins the FIA, he'd be like Charlie. hopefully, that'd be great. What do I mean by wild for Danny Rick? So basically, if Hamilton or Carlos Sainz or someone like that drops out of the race, I can kind of use Daniel Ricciardo as like my backup to that. Like, I expect Daniel Ricciardo will do exceptionally well, and I expect Daniel Ricciardo will probably slot into one of these positions if one of these drivers doesn't quite have the weekend that I'm expecting. So I'm kind of resting on my laurels a little bit. I've got 5 like solid predictions and 1 wild card as like maybe he'll slot in there, or I think he's gonna have a good weekend. I'm just not quite sure how good a weekend he's gonna have. George Russell to Merck, yeah, I love that. Both seats at Alpha, Williams, Haas, and Alpha are up for grabs. Yeah, kind of. I think if AlphaTauri can keep hold of Gasly, they'll do it. like I think you would. Liam talks motorsport. Hi mate, I can watch F1 this time. Nice, excellent. When could we get set up? That would be different now because I've got a completely different setup. So I'd have to have a little think and have a little look. Yuki won't leave, in my personal opinion, because it will make the relations with Honda sour and it would hinder their shift towards the Red Bull engines. But I mean, next year though, they're completely Red Bull. They won't have a Honda engine. I know that they'll still have the sort of framework that Honda have left for them,